Where did his go? Oh, sorry. Around, tucked it around the corner card.
Okay.
Test 1 2.
call this meeting to order. Where did I put my agenda? Yeah, let me take that one. Yeah. For April the 18th at 6:04. That's the old one. One moment, please. Is that if somebody else signed there? That can't be. I think I signed where you signed. I don't know. All right. Who did that? Stand for the prayer. Absolutely, that will sit. Well, we can stand for silence too, right? This is a moment of silence to honor the families and show our compassion for the teams from Saskatchewan. It was tremendous sad happening. Thank you very much. To ask if there's any declaration of interest in the meeting's agenda. Having seen none, we move forward. And we will come right into the public meeting and turn it over to Robert and then to J.L. Richards.
This is a public meeting for the proposed Community Improvement Plan Phase 2. In November of 2017, the Township of Whitewater Region retained J.L. Richards and Associates Limited, JLR, for the provision of a Community Improvement Plan Phase 2 CIP. JLR prepared a background report in January of 2018 that outlined the purpose and intent of the potential improvement programs to the Whitewater region and the policy context in support of said improvements. The background report was presented to Council at an open meeting on February 7th, 2018. On March 6th, the Township held an open house where JLR was able to present the potential improvements and CIP incentive programs. After the public consultation session in March, JLR submitted the final draft of the CIP, incorporating the comments received by staff and the public. Council may, by bylaw, designate the whole Whitewater region as a Community Improvement Project Area, CIPA. Once a CIPA is defined, Council may adopt a CIP for the CIPA. As per the Planning Act, this meeting serves as a statutory public meeting for the passing of a bylaw to designate the Township of Whitewater region in its entirety as the Community Improvement Project Area for the CIP Phase 2, and a bylaw to adopt the CIP Phase 2. Notice of the public meeting was provided for 2 consecutive weeks in the Township's block ad, which appears in a newspaper with general circulation to all households in the Township. Notice was also provided using Facebook and the website, and hard copies were provided at the municipal office. 1 comment was received earlier today from Donna Burns. The draft plan was also circulated to the County of Renfrew and provincial ministries for comment, and also presented to Council in an open meeting on April 4th. If a person wishes to be notified of the adoption of the proposed CIP Phase 2, they must make a written request to the clerk. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Whitewater Region before the adoption of the CIP, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Whitewater Region before the adoption of the CIP, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing before the LPAT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. At this time, Mr. Mayor, the consultant team, Mark Rivet and Tyler Duval, have a short presentation to be followed by questions from council.
If you'd like to go ahead with the presentation, Mark?
Yes, good evening, Your Worship, members of council, members of the public. Thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Mark Rivet. I'm a senior planner with J.L. Richards. Also in the room with me tonight is Tyler Duval, who's also a planner who worked on this project with me. So we have a quick PowerPoint presentation. Not going to make it too lengthy or too technical. Oh, sorry. All right, is this loud enough? Okay. So we have a quick Community Improvement Plan Phase 2 PowerPoint presentation for you tonight. It'll summarize a bit of the background and the process. So a Community Improvement Plan is a planning tool that establishes a framework for achieving community improvements to rehabilitate and revitalize project areas. It includes incentives to stimulate or encourage private and public sector investments, provides programs for municipal grants, loans, and rebates for improvements, requires municipal funding and community buy-in to be successful. So the goals of the CIP Phase 2 are that the project applies to the entire Township of Whitewater Region. We're going to be doing a concurrent amendment to the county plan in order for this to be possible for the entire township. So it's not specific for a lake or a specific farming area. It will apply to the whole entire township. It serves as a long-term framework that will direct and guide community improvements through financial incentives and municipally driven projects. So this is the tool that's required in order for the municipality to actually give out money. So it's in the municipal tax world, this is actually an interesting tool where the municipality actually is going to be providing incentives through grants for improvements. Provides direction for improvements that may promote the remediation of environmental and or agricultural features and may result in the improved protection of local water bodies. Mr. Tremblay kind of summarized a bit the dates to some of these steps that we took. This is just to kind of visualize it. So as indicated back in January, a background report was prepared. There were some site visits done with the chief building official and discussions with different agencies and county planning and also other consulting planning firms that provided input in terms of the background work. Our first draft was presented to the municipality back in March, and we had a public consultation in the form of an open house. Following the open house, the final draft community improvement plan document was provided and has been circulated. And the next step is where we're tonight, so it's the statutory public meeting. As I indicated, we are going to be working with the county to do what's called an OPA, so an official plan amendment to the county plan in order to recognize the entire municipality. And we'll be asking council to adopt two bylaws, one being what's called the CIP-A, so it's to identify the area that the project will apply to, and the other one is the actual community improvement plan via bylaw. So without going too much into the background report, the purpose of the background report was to kind of identify what exactly we're looking to achieve through the Phase 2 CIP, and it was identified in the township strategic plan that CIP was a good tool to look at promoting different forms of development or redevelopment, in this case environmental improvements. The township CIP is actually being implemented in two different phases. So there's a Phase 1 CIP that has already gone through this process, and that applies more to villages and hamlets in terms of more called downtown revitalization type improvements, facades or other types of works. The Phase 2, which is the purpose of tonight's meeting, is for programs so outside of the built-up area. So we're focusing more on the natural environment areas in terms of either value-added agriculture. I'll get into more details in terms of what all these mean. So we're looking at value-added agriculture, water quality improvements, shoreline and waterfront protection, septic system remediation, and brownfield redevelopment. So these were the key topics that were identified during the background and during some public input with different agencies I indicated. And these are what are going to be forming part of the different incentives. So the Planning Act is the tool that allows municipalities to designate community improvement project areas by bylaw and to prepare a CIP. As I indicated, an amendment to the County of Renfrew official plan will be required. We have already drafted the required amendment with county planning staff, and we'll be monitoring the county official plan review process to see how their timeline is going to work with our timeline. So the goal for this plan is that this tool or this incentive document would be in full force and effect in the early 2019. So it does give us some time to monitor the county's review. If we see that the full entire county 5-year review official plan process is too long, we would then trigger our own Whitewater Region initiated amendment, and then that will permit us to activate this plan in early 2019. So these are the proposed programs and grant amounts that were discussed and were proposed through the plan process. So in terms of septic system improvement grant program, so what we're looking at here is improvements to existing septic systems. There's no mandatory inspections being done. It's very voluntary based. If somebody is looking at improving their septic systems, and it doesn't have to be a waterfront system, priority will be given to those that have the most bang for your buck. But in terms of septic system improvements, the municipality is offering a grant up to 50%. So all of these you'll see are matching grants. So if you provide an amount, we'll provide a matching amount up to a maximum. So that's how all these work. So for septic improvements, we're proposing a matching grant of $7,000. So that means if the septic system replacement costs $14,000 or more, we will provide $7,000 to assist you in replacing your system. You will be responsible for the $7,000 plus. Similar agriculture value-added grant program. So again, Whitewater Region has a lot of agricultural lands, a lot of agricultural activity. What we're looking at here is assisting with either on-farm diversified or agricultural-related businesses. So farm stands, if somebody would be interested in building a new farm stand, marketing their farm stand, anything associated with promoting their farming business that has both tourism benefits for the municipality and it has direct economic benefits to the farming community. Again, this is a matching a grant of $5,000. Cattle fencing grant program is something that was provided as a program. We were provided some research material on this, and it's a tool that has been used through either different conservation authorities or different agricultural communities. There's a bit of description in the actual document with some illustrations. I'm no expert on cattle fencing, but we did seek some input, and we did get some description on what exactly that is. And again, there it was proposed that the amount, it's not a huge program. We're talking either $1,000 here. We were told that sometimes farmers actually have the materials, therefore there might not be a need for a significant amount of money for this type of program. We're focusing more on the money on other programs, but this is a program that could be of help for water quality. Agricultural Buffers Improvement Grant Program, again, that is trying to separate some of the livestock from going into certain water bodies or water courses by implementing some buffers. Again, this is either setbacks or landscaping or other types of measures that can be looked at. We're looking at $2,000 grant. Shoreline Restoration and Naturalization Grant Program. We actually did have some discussions with a couple at the open house about this. So this is for those properties that are abutting water courses. The one that we had discussed at the open house was somebody that was along the Ottawa River, and they had some very length, I think 400 feet of shoreline to work on. So this is, and that could be very costly to do shoreline work in terms of both the design and the implementation. So this is pretty flexible in terms of what will be covered, but it's providing up to $5,000 grant to do that type of work. Brownfield Rehabilitation Grant Program. What that is where there's identified contaminated sites and somebody would like to clean it up, you would be eligible to basically be getting a grant of $5,000. It's probably not going to be a very popular one, because usually decontaminating sites or remediating sites is very, very costly. But it's a program that ties in with that environmental theme, so we put it in as well. In terms of total amount per property, it was asked through the plan review process whether or not we can combine. So for example, if I have a farm abutting a water body and I'd like to do a farm stand, could I multiply various programs? And the answer was yes, to a maximum of 10,000. So you would be able to get, for example, a 5,000 for value added, and you could then go and maybe get 5,000 for shoreline work or something else that still fits on the property and fits within the $10,000 per property. So as I indicated, I don't think the CIP, we don't have the CIP, no. There is various copies of the actual CIP, and I believe it might be on the website as well. And it does give more descriptions in terms of the different tools. In terms of implementation, the review process is very simple. We've intentionally kept it very simple. There's a application form that's been prepared, and it's the same one for Phase 1 and Phase 2, just for consistency and approach. It can either be filled in person with the assistance of Mr. Tremblay or the CBO. There's no formal committee or review recommendation process for these. We really try to make it open, make it easy, and so we do have, like I said, we have a PDF form. There's also a marketing pamphlet that's been prepared, which will be activated once all this is approved and done. And the actual CIP document, right now we just printed it quickly there, color 8.5 by 11, but we'll be making it more like a little magazine type document, just to make it very attractive. Like I said, there are different pictures in there, but really, as long as you meet the theme and the project is reviewed by staff and presented to council, then there's opportunities for grants. I didn't indicate or talk too much about maximum grant amount. Maybe Mr. Tremblay or the mayor can indicate. The project is envisioned to start in 2019 with the first grant amount of $30,000 that municipal council would be putting in the program for the first year. And that gets reviewed every year. So in 2020, if the council decides that 20,000 was an appropriate amount, they can budget for that as well. If they see that there's been more uptake in certain programs, we can always revise these amounts. So it's a work in progress. It's like a bylaw, so all bylaws can easily be amended. So if we see that the septic program really requires more requires more money, more investment, or we're seeing better return on those types of programs, we could always amend this. So this is kind of a first approach. It was presented, through different committees. As Mr. Tremblay indicated, we worked with the county planning department. Also another planning consultant was involved, and different partners from the ministries also reviewed it. So what's in front of you now is kind of the consolidated version of all comments. And yeah, we think it should be a very successful program, and it's a very proactive, very forward-thinking approach. Usually you see these types of programs for signage improvements or storefront improvements. So this is very proactive. I'm sure it'll be a model being used out in Ontario right now, because there isn't too many in this nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Put out for questions from council first. Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Do you know any regions that you mentioned there's not many in Ontario now, but do you know of any regions currently running a similar program?
I think Tyler had reviewed a couple. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Tyler can maybe give us some information on which ones that I think Mr. Tremblay and Mr. Duval had shared a few examples of other ones.
There are no examples in terms of the water quality stuff that is particular to us, especially with Muskrat Lake. Prince Edward County has very similar projects in terms of value-added agriculture and supporting them, and I know, having come from Meaford, Meaford does as well. But we would be the first in the province to support residents in terms of, for instance, septic. Some municipalities have done mandatory septic inspections. We haven't done that here. This is the other side of the coin with incentives to encourage people to look at their septics. So we would be the only ones, I think, from that perspective. Villages and hamlets, I would say we were very late adopters of that. Many municipalities, Renfrew, Pembroke, would be Arm Prior are examples of CIPs for villages and hamlets, but not many in terms of supporting agriculture and water quality.
Great, thank you. I have a bunch of other questions, but maybe if I can ask just one more question.
Absolutely.
As far as the CIP area, we would have to designate, so we have to go to Renfrew County to designate the entire township for Phase 2 only. Is that correct?
And Mark can speak to this. The current official plan only allowed municipalities to do so for villages and hamlets and brownfields. That's why we did this in 2 phases. Just to remind everybody, we got a rural economic development grant from the province to pay for the work, for 50% of the work to do this. So with the county's 5-year review, there's a language in there that allows all townships to do CIPs that cover the entire geography, not just villages and hamlets. So we're just waiting for that process to conclude so that we can roll this out, but we can proceed with approving this. So that's the only tie into the county plan. When we circulated this to the ministry, they were very supportive. They had very minor feedback in terms of the brownfield stuff, mostly. So it has been reviewed, and we're just waiting the county change in language. So even if the county official plan is appealed, if this is not one of the sections that would likely be appealed, there'll be appeals on other stuff. So once that's in place, we'll be able to give grants. And as Mark had said, this is subject to council budgetary approval annually. So just like Phase 1, if you do not set aside the money, we will not be giving grants. And you can make the envelope bigger, or you can make it smaller, and we're required by the Planning Act and by the plan to review it to see what's successful and what's not.
Okay, thank you. So the only change to the OP would be the designation of the entire township for Phase 2. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
Will we be getting any money from the province or the county for this? Or is it all our money?
No, so this is a program that we would offer, so we could offer the grants. We did get money from the province to develop both phases, but in terms of providing the grants, it's typically done at the lower tier level.
Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, they have to, okay. Okay, so now we'll move to questions from the public. And we'll be looking for in favor or against only in the comments. Nothing lengthy, and we will go in turn of whomever is first to the mic. If there are any from...
Hi. I'm Don Deere, you probably know who I am. I was wondering, the 50% by the applicant, can that be in kind, or does it have to be supported by invoices?
It has to be supported by invoices. We're getting those questions now. So it has to be supported by invoices and estimates, and then once approved, before we pay out, they have to prove that they did the work and show us the proof of the costs that were incurred.
Okay. The other thing I had is septic system improvements. I know I've been talking to Doug a couple of years ago, I believe, about doing septic system inspections around the lake for septic systems that are, say, 15 or 20 years old, which I think 20 years is about the average life of a septic system. Is there any plan to do anything about that?
That will be up to council to decide in terms of a septic inspection program. This does cover the cost of an inspection.
Yeah,
So,
I realize that. That's why I'm asking if,
yeah.
because if there are, anthropogenic contamination of total phosphorus in Muskrat Lake, according to the Ministry of Environment, is 5%. So if you cut that in half, I think I told you, if you cut that in half, it's like shutting down 3 effluent treatment plants in Cobden. So to me, it's a good way to reduce total phosphorus in Muskrat Lake. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nell Rooney. I have a business in town, and I would like to ask Robert about Section 107 of the Municipal Act 2001 provides municipalities with the authority to make and provide grants for purposes that council considers appropriate to any person, group, or body, including a fund, within or outside the boundaries of the municipality for any purpose that council considers to be in the interest of the municipality. Section 107(2) provides additional provisions, including, and this one disturbs me, to guarantee a loan and to make a grant by way of a loan and to charge interest on that loan. What does that mean?
Not applicable here.
This would be page 7, the Municipal Act.
I think Mark's gonna talk about
Yeah, so those are tools that the Municipal Act does provide to a municipality. In this case, it's not applicable as municipal council will not be entertaining a loan for any residents. There are some CIPs we've worked on, for example, where if you're, let's say, for example, a septic system replacement is $20,000, we're offering $5,000. The municipality would offer a loan of $20,000, interest loan-free, and once you've done the work, we basically give you $5,000 back. Your loan now is $15,000. That's not a tool being proposed here. Very few municipalities want to entertain being a bank and actually renting those loans. So so this municipal act, this section here basically gives us what are the tools or what are the options that council can pick from. For this CIP, we're not proposing that council provides money via loans or determines its own interest rates and reimbursement and or so on.
I don't think it's an embarrassment. And what I'm saying is that if it says here that you're going to charge for loans on interest, like interest on loans, like if you weren't going to do it, why would you put it in here? This is out here for the public.
So no, so the Municipal Act says you can provide grants and loans. The plan says we're only gonna provide grants. So we're not providing loans.
Okay, so that really doesn't apply here then. Now, the province has nothing to do with this plan, right? They're not telling you that you have to do it.
No, absolutely not.
The one thing that the province has told us through the Ministry of Environment, specifically with regard to Muskrat Lake, is to look at a variety of tools to encourage water quality improvements.
Okay.
So they've encouraged us to use tools that are available to us. So the Planning Act allows us to do this, and the Municipal Act allows us to do grants. So they've encouraged us to use the tools we can to help property owners with water quality improvements specifically.
Alrighty, and it does say here that the provincial policy statement does not specifically reference community improvement planning. So what you're saying is that the province is not involved in this.
No, that's
Right.
not what I'm saying. So the provincial and the planner can speak to the provincial policy statement compared to the Planning Act, compared to the OP, compared to OCIP.
So the Community Improvement Plan is a tool under the Planning Act. So it does give municipalities a tool, and it works with the Municipal Act in terms of the grants and the loans, so they kind of work together. So it's in the Planning Act that tells us that we can and how we go about doing a community improvement project area and a community improvement plan and what types of items can be covered.
Yes, you went all through that.
Yeah,
I understand that.
okay.
Okay, now I have something else. If a grant or a loan is approved and the improvements are completed, is the contract then canceled? No repayment, no lien, no obligation whatsoever. Is that correct?
Correct. So there's only an application. So the application, people apply and tell us what they're going to do with estimates. It comes to council, they approve the application. Once the works are done and we get proof that the works occurred, including invoices and the like, then we cut a check and it ends there.
Okay, so nothing is forwarded to the province, who then puts a lien against your property. Now, if you're working with septic, it's got to be the health unit, which is provincial. Okay, so when they work on your
No,
septic,
our
nothing is forwarded to the province?
Our septics are inspected by our chief building official.
Yes, I know that, but what I'm saying is, when they start work on that, okay, does none of that paperwork that you're getting a grant for, is none of that paperwork forwarded to the province?
So when building permits and septic permits are completed,
Yes.
they do go to the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation,
Okay.
regardless of a CIP.
Okay,
And people that are required to get a building permit must get a building permit. So regardless if we're doing it in the context of a CIP or not, building permits, once completed, and septic permits, when completed, get forwarded to the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation.
so if there's any change in any of your property, like lakes
Not
or
septic
streams
permits.
or anything like that?
Sorry, not
Right.
septic, building. I know that there was, we had a meeting with MPAC earlier today, but building permits are tracked, by MPAC.
Okay, which is provincial, right?
Yep.
Okay, so what I mean is, like, if you're working with, let's say forestry or land or streams or lakes, that's part of your property. If that is going to be in a grant of some kind, fixing it up or changing it, is any of that sent to the province? It would have to be, because it is land, right? Land has to be registered with the province. So if there's so some of it does go to the province then, am I correct?
Just as it is now. So if you're going to do, like, sometimes you have to contact M&R if you're, depending on some of the works that you might be doing. If, say, you have a wetland on your property and you start putting fill in it, you should be talking to the M&R before you do that stuff. So the CIP, regardless, if you had to consult M&R or the Ministry of Environment, depending on where you are and any constraints that already exist, CIP doesn't change any of that. So we don't, as part of our process, send anything to anybody else. We just evaluate the application, bring it forward to council, they approve the grant or not. So, but if you were required, based on other constraints on your land, to consult with government authorities of any kind, that still applies. This doesn't change that in any kind of way.
Okay, and lastly, I would like to know, is all of this on your website? Is this all recorded, all of it? Everything that we've talked about, myself,
We tested
Okay.
we're on video as we speak, and we tested it and it's working, so yes,
it will be on video
it'll be
and
on
the
YouTube,
website?
yes. Yep.
Okay, all right, that's all I have to say.
One other question I had, just a small question. It says cattle fencing grant program. Is that strictly for cattle, or is it for horses or whatever else?
That will be for livestock in general,
So livestock in general, not just cattle.
not just cows, no.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to know, is this just along streams, or is it anywhere?
It will be in sensitive areas and seen as
But I think it's a requirement, provincial requirement to have fencing along streams, right, so you keep the cattle out right now.
and that will be the priority to the grant.
Okay.
The section specifically says direct access to water bodies.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm Donna Burns, as you all know. Now, I sent to each and every one of you tonight a letter that I received today, an email I received today from a former senator from Australia. Now, this senator, the Australian legislation is very similar to Canadian legislation. You didn't get this? Is that what you're saying?
No, I just don't see how Australia
Well,
pertains to
you'll
us.
see this in a second, okay? The whole purpose of this email is to make you aware of the fact that ICLEI, of which this municipality is a member of, ICLEI is the International Council for Local Environment Initiative, and you're a member of them. ICLEI is the right arm of United Nations. Their goal is they're using environment and climate change, and that's the facade that the changes to the Municipal Act, the Environmental Protection Act, and all that stuff is about. That speaks to all of this, what you're doing, all these changes you're making, your community improvement plan. I enclosed also in this email to you today a court case with Dr. Timball and Dr. Weaver, where they took him to court, the International Panel on Climate Change, tried to discredit Dr. Timball, who's a scientist on climate change and has been for over 30 years, tried to discredit him and silence him through court from revealing the truth about climate change. So you have that court case as well that will explain it. They lost that court case. That speaks to, again, this facade of all this legislation that you're being forced to implement on private properties. This ICLEI, again, which is what you're doing through the community improvement, you don't believe me. I can tell that.
Donna, we're not forcing anybody to do anything. That's the issue here. We're not forcing anybody to do anything. The people on private property make an application, at which time we can give them some money as a grant.
You're giving to the people the impression that all this stuff needs to be done to improve. You have to improve the environment. You have to do all this stuff for climate change. And you're trying to enforce it on private property. And I'm telling you, I've enclosed this also, this objection that I gave to the county that showed several pieces of legislation and the sections and all these pieces of legislation that shows you have no jurisdiction on private property. You have to get the owner's consent. So I've identified that as well. Hear me out. So what I'm pointing out to you is, and I'm just trying to make you aware. I realize you have a lot to read and deal with. So do I. I'm reading a lot. So I'm trying to share this information with you because there's a bigger picture here, and that's to shut down rural Ontario. It's what I'm talking about is not just my property, it's your property as well, it's your children's property, because the incentive is to remove us off our private properties. So all this information that I've given you, I respectfully request that you read it. You know, read it and educate yourself, because that's all it's about. And the Canadian Institute of Planners are also members of ICLEI. And the planners, sorry to say this, you're being used to do this. I suspect you don't know the Ministry of Infrastructure Act. Have you ever read that? No, I didn't think so. Or the Public Lands Act. All these different acts that I speak to here. So my point is respectfully to ask you to read this stuff, educate yourselves, learn from it. Because what's happening is about removing our property rights. And that's what I'm concerned about. It's removing our freedoms and our property rights as well as yours. Thanks.
My comment to that is each landowner can apply. It's entirely their choice. it's not that we don't care. We're putting this out with the idea that if we can help some people in our municipality move forward on their goals, on their property, with a grant that they apply for, with no repercussions at all, then we feel we're doing a good thing. And it's not going to cause anybody in this room to lose their land. So that's just my comment to your comment. No, not after we pass it for a year.
Just because that wasn't on Mike, the question was there could be a change of government, and could it change? They would have to change the Planning Act and the Municipal Act. The Municipal Act says councils can provide grants should they want to, and the Planning Act says that municipalities can approve CIPs. So they would have to change both pieces of legislation to do that. Yeah, so a provincial government,
She's saying the municipal government, this municipal government could change.
yes, the next, it's, as Mark has pointed out, this is approved by bylaw. They can repeal the bylaw. They could, which gets rid of the program. They could also keep the bylaw and approve no funding for community improvement grants.
Excuse me, but I think we need to...
Yeah, well, just wait, come back up after.
Okay, because I think...
Yeah, because we have somebody at the mic and he has a right to talk.
Everybody hears it.
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is David McGonigal. I'm with Renfrew County Beef, previously known as the Renfrew County Cattlemen. I'm here, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I really want a point of clarification. Our members are going to ask about this cattle fencing program. And so I just wanted to be clear, is it for any fencing, I understand it's livestock fencing, any livestock fencing, or is it restricted to those areas that may be environmentally sensitive? It's important for our members to know that.
The way the plan is worded now is to promote the construction of fences to prohibit cattle and other livestock from direct access to water bodies. So it would be any water bodies. And it does specify cattle or other livestock.
Thank you. May I supplementary? Is there any other program that the municipality participates in for fencing of livestock? There was at one time, we used to get fencing from the municipality, and the question keeps coming up often. And there is no program?
Not that I'm aware of.
Could one be considered? I'm particularly along roadways.
We can make note of that and undertake some research on how that was previously provided and how potentially it could be done, but we can take that back and note it.
Because currently the province does assist with fencing along major highways, and the county will assist in some areas. And the township did at one time, I mean, I'm dating myself probably, anyhow, assist with fencing along roadways, municipal roadways. And so I'm just wondering if there was any possibility that we could go back there to that. Fencing is becoming critical, particularly for the livestock industry. We see all the fences being torn out, which is may or may not be a good thing, but it becomes more and more difficult to keep cattle where they're supposed to be. And it's difficult to get pasture because fences don't be looked after. Right, Mr. Mackay? Thank you.
Councillor Olmsted?
You may know this better than I do, but I think along some trail systems now, there is help for fencing, is there not? Through snowmobile associations and four-wheel associations.
I'm not aware of how that is being approached at this point. There is a law that pertains to abandoned rail lines, but once they become a part of an integral roadway system, which that would be a trail, will be considered for that, same as sidewalks. That may not be the same wording. Mr. McGonigal knows that I'm pretty well dated also. And Westmeath did have a program, and they cut it out I'm thinking in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, because I applied for it at that time for my farm along the roadway, and they refused me. Our Ross Township still offered some subsidies, I believe, right up until amalgamation, but I don't know, I can't remember what council did after that. So their best bet is to research that and get back to you to answer that. Thank you. Next. Yeah, you can come back up now, Donna.
I was just saying this, with this provincial government could be a change, which means your funding for your, because you're getting funding for these grants from the province. Are you not from Municipal Housing and Affairs? I thought I read that somewhere.
No, we got a Rural Economic Development Grant from OMAFRA to develop the CIPs. So only for the development of this work, so to do phase 1 with a student and phase 2 with a consultant team. So the township in its annual budget has to approve the funding. So the only thing that the change of government provincially would do is if they change the Planning Act or change the Municipal Act regarding the entire ability to do CIPs. So no, the funding was only received to come up with the plan. The funding for the actual grants are the responsibility of the township.
So you have no support from the province when you do this CIP?
No, the province doesn't provide CIPs.
And you have no support because they're not standing behind you on this either?
So they commented on the CIP, so they allow municipalities to offer grants through CIPs. We provide the they don't provide the funding for the CIPs.
You're on your own. Okay, thanks.
Any other comments from the public? Okay.
If I can, Mr. Mayor, the next steps would be to bring forward the 2 necessary bylaws on May 2nd. So that would be the next steps.
Okay, thank you. This is a program that we entered into to try and help some members of our community to offer support to our landowners and community, and none of these things have ever been done in the past within Whitewater Region. So we brought it forward because we think it's valuable to our residents, the ones that wish to participate in that program. Okay, seeing no more comments, thank you very much. Mark. So we'll move on to announcements. Councillor McLaughlin.
Well, there's a spaghetti supper that you could attend tomorrow evening at the Cobden Presbyterian Church at 6 o'clock. It's a goodwill donation going to CPAN. So you could come there for supper and then come here afterwards to the dementia presentation. Is that not tomorrow night?
Oh, that's for the, gee.
Okay.
Okay. I've got other meetings. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, but I will try.
Well, when it comes to food?
We give it a whirl.
Okay. And then trivia. You can
Saturday
warm up
night.
this Saturday night at Crossroads, and then the following week at the Legion, the Presbyterian Church are putting on a trivia as well. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this Saturday is the church supper in Beachburg. I think it's this Saturday.
Oh my goodness sakes. Supper, then trivia, then.
Right.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you, Darrell. Chris.
No announcements, thank you.
Charlene.
None, thank you.
Mackay.
None, thank you. It's Mr. Mackay.
Pardon me? I don't wait. Okay, Councillor Regier.
I have nothing at this time, thank you.
Reeve Miller.
Just wondering about the dementia thing tomorrow night. I didn't know if that was for anyone or was that just for council? I can't remember.
Always the joker.
I believe that was a council-specific one. I know
Okay.
that the Alzheimer's Society that we've been working with are trying to organize a number of them, including some staff training as well. So I believe tomorrow's session is specifically with council.
One other thing, and I'm sure you're somewhat aware of this, but I guess you know about the IPM in the meeting and them wanting, the county actually wants an IPM in the east. And I attended a meeting with the IPM and the local groups. I see some of them here. But in any case, we were trying to put the word out in the country about locations and interest, and I just wanted to, for anybody that has not been thinking about that if they have any ideas, the county would appreciate hearing about them. And I particularly would like to hear about it in Whitewater Township. But it's tough go. You need 800 acres minimum. So I'll leave it at that.
I believe we have the word out in Whitewater region fairly heavy. I think there's going to have to be, there's only a personal comment here too, by the way, I don't mean to insult anybody, but I think there's going to have to be a little more financial participation for the farmers in order that it is going to fly. And I don't mean just here. I think we've come to the age where farmland has got to be extraordinarily expensive and needs to be dealt with in that fashion. But we're still pushing to help any way we can. And so now, my turn. I think this is absolutely amazing here. The two of our businesses within Whitewater region have been nominated for tourism awards. These are Whitewater Brewing Company and Valley Cycling Tours. If you don't know what Valley Cycling Tours are, that would be Cindy Jameson and Jameson Tours in Beachburg. And so there are two companies that are being run by young entrepreneurs that are doing well, and I'm very proud to have this letter here stating that they are being up for awards. One says they're nominated, and the other said they're going to be presented, so that's good news too. Anyway, it's very, very exciting to hear things happening in Whitewater region where we move ahead. We're an exciting township, and we're going forward. And that's the last of the announcements. So, we are going to, Councillor McLaughlin.
Just to further up on dementia, there is a presentation tomorrow afternoon at the Civitan Hall, which is open to the public. So, when Reeve Miller was speaking about it, it came to me that was on. It starts at 1 o'clock at the Civitan Hall tomorrow afternoon.
Very good. So moving on to number 6, and Phil, you're on.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship, Mr. Mayor, and councillors, and ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me to make this short presentation. And I will keep it short, because I've timed it. So unless you ask me a whole bunch of difficult, embarrassing questions, it should be under 10 minutes. I've got actually 9 slides, but one is a hello slide and one is a goodbye slide, so that's really only 7 slides. As somebody who's lived in four provinces and visited them all except for the Yukon, I can say that we do live in a very beautiful part of the country. Am I too close to this, or am I too far away? Or?
Phil, take the muffler off the other one and just stick it on. It's just foam. Just try that. Sometimes it helps.
Is that a little better? Oh, okay, thanks. So I really do think that we live in a very beautiful area. And I think the municipality really does a good job in beautifying the area. We look at little lakes and so on as examples of that. And let me say that I know there are many challenges in road maintenance in the township. I'm aware that there are many, many kilometers of roads. And I think, generally speaking, again, the township does a very good job in maintaining the roads and the verges and keeping the area beautiful. So why do we, in the name of brush cutting, crash, bash, and slash the verges and the sides of our roads in such a dramatic fashion? I realize that this is an important job in some areas. And I spoke with Randy Buchwald, who was very helpful and very courteous, and explained that the use of heavy machinery does save a significant amount of time in terms of man hours and efficiencies. And I get it, I do. But look at the effect. In some areas, it's absolutely brutal. We also, in some areas, have great clods of earth where the machine passes over. This machine, by the way, as you probably know, looks like something out of a Mad Max movie. I have to question why this is done in such a brutal fashion. As Mr. Buchwald explained to me, the grasses and the weeds grow up and cover most of it. I understand that. But in my opinion, not all of it. Not by a long shot. Not where trees have been scarred several meters up from the ground. And we lived on the prairies for 10 years where a tree grows about an inch a year, so I'm pretty sensitive as to how things grow and grow up. This is a very aggressive and indiscriminate machine that is used, which essentially knocks down everything in its path, leaving some areas looking like they've been strafed by the RCAF. There has to be a better way. This particular spot on Lacroix Bay, the owner across from it is trying to sell his property. This must present quite a picture when the real estate agent brings round a prospective buyer. Is this level absolutely necessary? I understand that brush cutting is necessary in some areas. But in all areas? In Lacroix Bay, where I live, to my knowledge, since we bought there, there's never been an accident. The particular egregious example which I showed you came about because there's a bit of a blind corner there. But again, there's never been an accident. There's no problems with access. There's no problems with the school buses. There's no problems with delivery trucks. Again, no accidents ever. We just slow down. So I suggest that we be a little more selective where we do this aggressive brush cutting. And does it really need to be done so aggressively? You know, if people see all this debris and general detritus on the side of the roads, what signal does it send? Might as well throw my garbage there. Why keep your own property looking good? And if you cut down the brush, is it too much to ask that it be taken away? Here you did a really nice job on the causeway. You put in new posts, you put in a guide wire, but you cut a whole bunch of brush down and just left it there. Well, sure, it rots. Everything rots eventually. But why couldn't you chip it or take it away? Is that so difficult? Does that add a lot of cost? So, I know that you probably get a lot of complaints without any suggestions or recommendations. So these are my suggestions and recommendations. Evaluate the necessity of widespread brush cutting over every single road in our municipality. please treat those areas with a little more care and sensitivity. I modified these slides because my better half looked at them and said, you're retired now, you're not in management, add in the word please. So I've added in, please return to Lacroix Bay, and please tidy up the mess at that bend. Bring in some chainsaws, because it is horrible. And at the same time, please remove the brush that was cut when those new posts were installed at the causeway. Again, I want to stress I believe the municipality does a good job. But I do think that the whole issue of brush cutting and the level at which you do it should be reviewed. Emily Clark, who is an English actress, said, I long for the countryside. That's where I go for my calm and tranquility, from being able to come and find a spot of green. I think she might have a problem coming down to Lacroix Bay right now. So I just want to thank you all for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Phil. I think you'll find that everybody sitting around here agrees with the appearance of this, and I for sure, because I drove down on for another reason, and when I drove in, I thought to myself, you know, we could look into doing this a little bit different. There's probably something else out there now. This machine was the most modern way to do it when we purchased it, and we should look at other ways. I agree. Maybe our staff can come up with suggestions on, you know, different things, but I will tell you why we do it. We do it because it allows the sun on the roadway, which in the wintertime allows our sand and salt quicker access to the sun, and makes the road safer quicker. It isn't done for the summer. It's strictly done to improve sun saturation on the roadways. But I agree with the appearance, because you drive past my place, if not drive past my place on the way home. It's not just at your place.
I'll check it out. Well, thanks for that explanation. I didn't realize that about the winter. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, in discussing with the manager, what we'll do is we'll probably go and have another look at Lacroix Bay, and maybe staff can come back with an overall either policy which explains why we do it. There are a number of reasons. I know Janet enumerated them, from the road base and drainage was an issue and always is an issue in Lacroix Bay. So if we can, staff will go back and see if there are any minor things we can do in Lacroix Bay to make it look better, and then come back with a staff report on overall brushing operations, if that's suitable to council.
Councillor Mackay.
I think if we do it more often, them trees wouldn't get that size and it wouldn't look so bad.
Yes, and
we're trying to catch up, I understand.
Absolutely, and that's why the big trees they got to be big trees when they shouldn't have ever got that far, and it becomes very hard to do it. But when you look at your slides, some of the practices in the past were to use a pole saw to cut clean those hangers, and this was done in a bad time of the year to have staff doing that. So and I'm not speaking for staff right now, they will relook at it. And any place where you're close to housing, I'm sure will be a lot of conversations on it. But again, it's one of those necessary evils. We could just do it different maybe for you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you for bringing this. I would also agree that on my road, Mowat Road, at the corner of Mowat and Highcrest, I think it looks exactly the same. And I don't know if the machine can come back, because I understand it does mulch things as well. So any of the logs that are sitting there and the debris that's sitting there, I don't know if in the summertime the machine can be taken back and actually do it so that it's mulched up, rather than having these big pieces and brush all over the place. But it is not pretty looking. I would totally agree.
Thank you. The mulching would be a very positive step if that could be done.
And that machine is totally capable of it. but I don't know if maybe it requires another adapter or something on it to allow it. I've watched them on demonstrations, and they knock a big tree down and they just bring it back, and it's just a pile of wood chips when they're finished, but that might require something else. But I know staff is going to look into it and get back to us with a report. And I don't think staff is not aware of it, and I don't think they're in favor of it either. It's just that at this point we ask so much of our staff that sometimes it's just more kilometers required to get stuff done. But thank you, Phil, for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you again.
Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, I probably should have said something a while ago, but in my business I hear more and more complaints about this procedure. It seems like every year. I think I heard about it 3 years ago. I think the complaint then was that the machine was sitting idle for way too long, and then that machine was up and used, and then I heard from the people up and down that road, up beside Muskrat Lake, that why did it bash everything to hell? So I said, well, at least the machine's getting used. But I do hear more and more issues every year that people aren't happy with it.
We will definitely be looking into it. Thank you. I think we need to. We are going to take a 5-er. Signing off.
exactly. If I could ask everyone to please take their seats, we're going to re-adjourn here in 1 minute. Thank you. 1 minute. Okay, we're going to bring this Corporate Services Committee meeting to order here. Everyone's ready to roll here? Perfect. So the first item, 7.3A, I have a recommendation that the Corporate Services Committee recommend Council of the Township of Whitewater Region enact a bylaw to establish and surplus vehicles and equipment policy. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Olmsted, seconded by Councillor McLaughlin. And I will turn this over to Rob. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is a refresh of, we had a surplus of assets policy. Just some key highlights. We distinguish between items of about $1,000 of value or less. This speaks to online auction sites and resale websites such as GovDeals, which we would utilize, but we can use a number of different options to surplus equipment. We do specify that the funds from the sale would go to reserve, and that we would get an appraisal, and an appraisal is defined as a written opinion of market value prepared by a person having appropriate credentials and experience, including staff. So in our case, we do have a licensed mechanic, so we could get him to do appraisals on certain pieces of equipment, but we would ask for minimum bids for items of $5,000 or more to ensure that we're getting minimum bids. That doesn't mean that it would be $5,000, but based on the value of what we're trying to do, and we would advertise using our website. We do also specify in this policy that surplus assets cannot be sold to any member of council or employee, as well as those relationships that are outlined in the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. So that would be sibling, in addition to sibling, spouse, or child of any member of council or an employee of the corporation. So we're being very clear that surplus equipment will not go to staff. And we're also clarifying and maintaining the policy that trade-ins are not permitted at this time. So if there's any questions of council.
Councillor Jackson, and then Councillor McLaughlin.
What if the asset is posted on GovDeals? Is there still that limitation? Why wouldn't they be allowed to bid like anybody else? Because it is a very open process, and it's an online bidding war basically until it closes. So why couldn't anybody bid against it? Because we're not controlling it. GovDeals is. There is nobody in control. It's just the highest bidder gets it.
I think it's a perception issue, and for transparency, and I believe that we're better off to say that if staff and council can buy equipment elsewhere. I mean, That's a choice, and it's a limitation, but you're right, with GovDeals, it doesn't necessarily have to be, but we've had instances where surplus vehicles did go to staff, and I think sometimes that's a perception issue. But GovDeals is a great service, but my preference would be to say, for the time being, just like trade-ins, trade-ins down the road might be something that council could reevaluate in terms of, does it bring value to the township in terms of when we're replacing equipment, but for the time being, we believe that trade-ins shouldn't be pursued either.
Councillor McLaughlin?
I kind of have to agree with Councillor Jackson, because once it's put on there and it's like an auction, then I don't see why, and I don't think at any other time in my career has municipal, have we taken or put things on an auction like this. And yes, there were things that were bought by employees, but it wasn't like an auction. It was either bought through dealerships. So I can see where Councillor Jackson's coming from. I can also see where Rob's coming from. It's a much tidier idea that we say no, and then we never get in any conflict. My next question was, so if another municipality wants to purchase it, can that be done? Can they do it without having to go to tender or before it even goes out as surplus? Can other municipalities or other, I'm thinking like airport commission, if there's a piece of equipment, a used piece of equipment, because I remember them coming here and saying, like, if you had used pieces of equipment that we might be interested, could we get a chance at them?
Yes, Section 1.6 notes that we can sell to another municipality, organization, or individual. Also, I should note that council can also decide on another way of disposal. So it still allows you some flexibility to do so as needed. So, but yes, we would look at, so sometimes GovDeals will work, most times it will, but sometimes we can go directly to municipalities or other organizations if we think that we can get fair market value for the piece. And in that case, if council wants to donate it or do that stuff, we would bring forward a report to council and do that. So it doesn't preclude us from doing that.
Councillor McLean, then Councillor Jackson.
I remember when I started, there was 2 or 3 fire trucks, an ambulance, and some other vehicles sat there for a year or two. So if we're going to do it, let's get rid of that stuff right away. Thank you.
I agree. Councillor Jackson?
GovDeals is certainly the way to go, and then, you know, everybody bids. If municipalities want to take a look at it, I know our public works manager at Laurentian Valley is always looking at GovDeals to see if he can get a deal for a piece of equipment or an add-on to another piece of equipment. It's open bidding, and that's the fair way to do it. I'm all in support of GovDeals.
Any other comments?
So what I would suggest, if we want to keep the restriction now that council and employees cannot, and no trade-ins, and we can evaluate, we do have a number of surplus items that we should dispose of. We're hoping that we've caught up on some of those, and then we can monitor it, and should that restriction be lifted, we could do so. The alternative would be to entertain any motion to amend the policy as it's currently written, because you are in committee and the policy would only come back next time anyway.
Stan?
While I do agree with Councillor Jackson and Councillor McLaughlin, I strongly agree with them. I think I more strongly agree with the CAO in that it's just a nice, tidy process where we keep the township right out of it altogether. So I strongly agree with the CAO to leave that wording in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson?
Under that section 2.3, can you just add on the end, unless purchased through GovDeals? Because then it is an online, it's open bidding, it's not, a notice on the bulletin board that we're selling pieces of equipment, and who wants it and who can see it, or it's not advertised in the local paper. It's across the province in GovDeals. So to limit it to a sibling, spouse, child, or any member, you're really limiting your number of bids, and chances are they won't. But it does give the opportunity for anybody. Just it's an open bidding process, so if it was just added unless purchased through GovDeals. And I definitely agree that no trade-ins are permitted, because typically you get a better deal through GovDeals. Your trade-in value is never worth the effort to do a trade-in. So at the end of, unless it's disposed of through GovDeals. So if it's disposed of through GovDeals, then anybody can bid. It just doesn't limit. I get the perception, but if it's an open bidding process, then council certainly can, if there are complaints, the council can say, look, it was an open bid across the province. Everybody had the same right. They go up by increments, I think it is. Sometimes it's $1, I don't know, $5, $1,000. I don't know if there's an increment bidding, but it's the highest bidder, and you send your check, you're purchasing it from GovDeals, and GovDeals takes their percentage and sends the check to the municipality. And then the municipality, there's so many days that they have to pick up the piece of equipment or the item that is for sale, and if they don't pick it up, they lose their money, but the money is paid through GovDeals. And it's an open process, in my opinion. Then GovDeals pays the township less their commission on GovDeals. That's so you don't pay to advertise on there. You have a commission. They get a commission.
So if the mover and just on that note, after the mayor, if the mover and seconder support that, we could just, because we're in committee, we could bring that forward if that was council's wish.
Mayor Johnson?
Just a question on, to clarify, the person that buys it at no time is ever writing a check to the township. It's always to GovDeals, correct?
Yes.
So they're really, then that, I see some validity to that. It opens it up to our residents. I'm kind of up in the air about opening it to staff through any real means, but at least that system, it's not prearranged or influenced in any way, because the people selling it have absolutely no way of being influenced. It's being done by an auctioneer.
Yeah, and you don't typically see a half-ton truck being bought for $1,000. If it's a half-ton truck that's on there, it's usually, $5,000. And I know in the past, in a lot of municipalities, and I'm not speaking on behalf of this municipality, but I know in the past in a lot of municipalities, there was, nobody would come out to bid when the bidding happened. So it was whoever was the closest one here sort of thing and knew about it directly, got a really good deal on a half-ton or a, whatever it was. You don't see that in GovDeals. It's wide open bidding across the province. And it's better for the municipality. We sold a truck and we got lots of money for it, so it's kind of funny.
I'm totally in favor of GovDeals doing the sale. It was just who can. But then you know what? We probably can't determine who can buy it from GovDeals once we put it on there. So I would believe then that Charlene has a point.
Councillor Mackay?
On that GovDeals, do you explain what condition the truck's in? Like sometimes them old dump trucks are in pretty rough shape.
Yeah, you have to put on a description of what the truck is like, and if there's any deficiencies, you have to be very open about what's going on with the equipment, the year, anything that you're known about, and you can put a minimum bid, obviously. Yeah, a reserve bid, which is the minimum sort of thing. But yeah, you have to be, because I've seen that happen before as well, with a fire truck being sold, and the fire chief never notified that there was an issue with, it is as is, where is. However, if you know there is an issue, you are supposed to disclose it.
Yeah.
It is as is, where is, but known issues are to be disclosed.
If you look at the big auctions, they'll have running, not running, has been gone over by mechanic, this is the defects, reasonable shape for age and all that stuff, but you're right, by law, an auctioneer company has to disclose any deficiencies, so that's the simple thing.
Councillor Olmsted?
Yeah, I think I was the first one that, so if that's everybody's understanding of GovDeal's process, then I have no problem adding that recommendation.
And Councillor McLaughlin, you were the seconder?
I certainly, because as the mayor says, the check is not wrote to the township, it's wrote to GovDeals. So it's a process that we get the money through GovDeals. Where it goes, well, that's up to GovDeals.
Very good. Thank you very much. So do we need to reread that? Could you do that for me, please? Oh, okay.
That Corporate Services Committee recommend Council Township of Whitewater Region enact a bylaw to establish a surplus vehicles and equipment policy with a change to section 2.3 to add unless the asset is disposed of through govdeals.com.
Work with that? Okay. So all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And item number B is election policies. There's a recommendation that Corporate Services Committee recommend Council of the Township of Whitewater Region enact a bylaw to establish a municipal election automatic recount policy. Number 2, enact a bylaw to establish a use of corporate resource for campaign purposes policy. And number 3, enact a bylaw to establish a municipal election sign policy. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Mackay, seconded by Mayor Johnson. And I will turn this over to Rob.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a few changes occurred to the Municipal Elections Act. One was to add that council can pass a policy to determine when an automatic recount would occur. So although we use telephone and internet voting in the counting is pretty easy, in a recounts must always be done in the same way a count was done. So for telephone and internet, it's really just pressing the final button. But with about 25% of votes being cast by paper ballot, and this year we're using tabulators, it is good to determine when a recount would be automatic. And many municipalities across the province have adopted a similar policy with the similar items. Of the smaller ones, similar to us, Greater Madawaska and Hastings Highlands would be 2 examples, and everybody's adopting a very similar threshold. So it would be if the difference in votes to determine who would get elected, so it's if to be elected is 10 votes or less, or 1% of votes cast, one or the other, then an automatic recount would occur. There aren't many instances where that would happen, but in those instances, because of the proportion of paper ballots we do have, I would recommend we proceed with an automatic recount policy. As I said, this is very similar language that other municipalities have passed. The use of corporate resources, the Municipal Elections Act always said that municipal and local board corporate resources cannot be used to support the candidacy of a person, either for or against. And some municipalities adopted policies, others didn't. Now it is required that we adopt such a policy, and that policy has to be in place by May 1st. So it just speaks that staff can't campaign on our dime. They can't do so during work hours. The one thing I'd like to highlight is because you have a miscellaneous expense account that only you can control, we're recommending, as other municipalities have, is that those funds be used before nomination day. So in our case, that would be July 27th. So those funds are not great. I'm not saying that they can really change the course of an election, but perception is everything. So we're recommending that those funds, so 700 for the mayor and 500 for every member of council, be used before nomination day, which is July 27th. Municipal election signs, I understand that this is always a question of clarity. So this is not a regulatory bylaw where we would prosecute people under the Provincial Offences Act. It's not meant to be that. I do have broad powers as the returning officer to deal with issues as they arise to ensure the fairness of the election. So what this policy is meant to do is just provide clarity, to say don't put a sign on somebody's property without their permission, and it's kind of those basic features. Signs are not allowed on municipal property with the exception of road allowances, but you cannot put it on road allowances abutting an advanced voting center or the municipal vote help center, which is this office. So very common sense issues. And the language mirrors the current guidelines that the County of Renfrew has. So it's meant to provide greater clarity. It is not a regulatory bylaw, and as the returning officer, I would deal with those issues with my powers to ensure that the election is fair. So we're proposing these three policies at this time.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Councillor Jackson?
It's nice to see that this policy is passed ahead of time and probably won't be changed, and it is to public. The last time it was not public. You had to go view it, and then it might be changed.
Reeve Miller.
Not exactly pertaining to what we just saw here, but I am curious, early in this term, we had, maybe even before your time, Robert, maybe since your time, did we ever get the integrity of the voting list taken care of? There was issues there. We were going to deal with it this term, and I'd just like an update on that. I want a new mic.
I actually served on the a task force for AMCTO, which is the Clerks and Treasurers, on the review of the Municipal Elections Act, and one of the main things was to say to MPAC in the province that the voters list needed a lot of work. They're looking at, I'm not defending them, but they're looking at permanent solution on how to deal with it. Right now we're dependent on MPAC data. We get the list on July, at the end of July, and we have a month with the information we have at our availability, so our tax rolls, our vital statistics information, knowledge that we have to clean it up. We have a month to do that, but we're still reliant on the information that MPAC had. So for instance, in Meaford last time, we went back on deaths and death notices just on our own to remove people, and found out that there were people that had died 12 years before they were still on the voters list. But we had looked 5 years back, and then we found out from MPAC they had gotten that data from Vital Statistics, another arm of the government, but only 8 years back. So our understanding is MPAC now has a good agreement with its own agencies. Also, it shares the provincial voters list and the federal voters list, which will have a provincial election occurring in June, so there will be that list will be refined with that process, so I'm hopeful. We have good local knowledge that I think will help, but my understanding is long-term they're looking at Elections Ontario taking responsibility for the voters list rather than MPAC, but that's a longer-term 2022 issue. So we'll do our best in that window that we have to make sure the voters list is as accurate as it can be.
Councillor McLaughlin.
More just clarification, Rob. When you were talking about recounts and you're using tabulators, when you do a recount, will those be done like individually, like looked at each ballot, looked at one at a time? Is that how you'll do the recount?
So the recount has to be done in the same way that the vote occurred. So in that case, it would be re-putting them through the tabulators for the paper votes, and then retabulating the results for telephone and internet. That doesn't take away from if there are some serious concerns or there's a request to the court for a judge to do a recount, and then the judge can decide how the recount would be done. But tabulators have been used in the province forever. In the city of Ottawa, for instance, they've used them since in the 90s. So they're fairly, the technology is very much proven, and there will be detailed testing of both the telephone internet system and the tabulators ahead of time. So I'm confident that we'll be able to do it. The town of Renfrew is also deploying tabulators, so we're not going to be alone. So in terms of training and procedures and all that, but the recount, to your question, the recount has to be done in the same fashion that the original count was done.
Thank you. That answers my question. I was just a little, I just wondered if it was a recount, if you would take the paper ballots and look at them individually. That's what I was thinking. I like your idea. It's certainly got to get speeded up from last time.
The 1 a.m.
No promises, but we're thinking that we will close at 8 o'clock and announce at 8:30 in the basement is the goal. And with advanced voting occurring with 4 new full days of voting from 10 to 8, we're going to have in 4 different locations as advanced votes. So if people want to vote by paper, they'll have a location in Ross Township, Westmeath, Beachburg, and Cobden to come to, and then telephone and internet for 11 days that we can close the voting at 8 p.m. that day in this room with scrutineers and candidates, and reveal the results at 8:30 in the basement. So that's what we're working towards.
Councillor Mackay?
What about Foresters Falls?
So we picked an accessible location. So it's the church off of on the way to Mowat Road.
Cedar Haven.
Cedar Haven, so the large church on that corner. So it covers off all of Ross Township. It's accessible, and that's why we picked it as a location.
Just as good as Fortress Falls, really.
Any other comments? Seeing none, then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And that closes our community services meeting. Thank you. Councillor Mackay, you're up.
Economic Development Tourism, Community Improvement Plan Phase 2, adopted.
That Economic Development and Tourism Committee recommend Council of the Township of Whitewater Region enact bylaws to designate the Township of Whitewater Region as the Community Improvement Project Area for the Community Improvement Plan Phase 2 and to adopt the Community Improvement Plan Phase 2. And as mentioned earlier, the bylaws would come forward at the next meeting.
I need to find that. Charlene Jackson and Darryl McGaw. Yeah, questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. You comment about my chair. Okay, first impression, community exchange, action plan.
That Economic Development and Tourism Committee recommend Council Township of Whitewater Region approve the FICE Action Plan 2018-2020.
Can I have a mover? Mayor Johnson, Kathy Regier. Councilor Regier, sorry. Any questions?
And maybe if I can just give a summary. When Arnprior, so we went to Arnprior, they came to us. And they had some very good suggestions. So what the action plan tries to do is address some of them. So one was the sidewalks on Main Street, and we know through the True Love project that those will be addressed. The other one was tourism information when the tourism booth is closed, and we've added racks here at the township. So those are just two examples. But they did provide a wide variety of things, such as promoting shopping, the lookout, all those things. So the plan is while adopted, subject to council approval through the budget process. So although we've set some time frames for some of these issues, it's just so that we have an action plan that we can then report back to council on as part of the quarterly report. One of the things we're going to do with our summer student is continue the improvements on the website, so the business directory, shopping options. We're doing an attractions map of the features of the township that we're going to put on the website. So there's a variety of things we're trying to do. So the plan is just a guide for us on those items so we don't forget them. So there's 19 in total.
I was a little skeptical when we did that, and Hal and I went through our prior, but once you get feedback from people that, things you don't realize that, oh, I didn't think you take things for granted, and it's good. So can we have any other questions or comments? Mr. Olmsted?
If I may, yeah. I like how this program dovetails into the CIP program. Robert, I've been hearing a lot about the CIP program, and Robert and I last week met with one very interested gentleman, but of course, along the corridor. But there's been lots of excitement with the phase 1 of the CIP program. I think it really dovetails well in with this, and I think the community will really benefit from it.
Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so what do we got? Okay, we're doing Ontario Main Street renovations, revitalization initiative.
That Economic Development and Tourism Committee recommend Council Township of Whitewater Region approve the list of projects to be funded in 2018 with the Main Street Revitalization Initiative funding received from the Province of Ontario, and enact a bylaw to enter into a municipal funding agreement with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario for Ontario's Main Street Revitalization Initiative in the amount of $43,846.
Oh yeah, I need a mover, Mayor Johnson, and a seconder, Councillor Jackson.
So speaking in terms of dovetailing with the CIP, this money kind of came out of nowhere, and I'm not sure, it was announced at the Roma conference, and as a staff member, we didn't even know this was coming. It's to be used in similar fashion as gas tax and OSIF formula based, so we do not have to apply any matching dollars. We do have to tell them how we're going to use the money. Interestingly enough, the guidelines fit well with our Phase 1 Community Improvement Plan, so it speaks to CIP strategies, but also municipal physical infrastructure improvements such as signage, streetscape and landscaping improvements, lighting and interpretive elements, as well as marketing, including special events. I recently found out that we did apply for a second rural economic development grant for a branding exercise that would deal with entrance signage for the township. We were unsuccessful in that grant. So what we're recommending as part of this is to focus on the hamlet and village signs instead. If you're noticing, some are very, very faded, and La Paz and Haley Station do not have any entrance signage to begin with. So the 5 items that we're recommending to use the funding for is new entrance signs for the villages and hamlets. Foresters Falls has one sign, but doesn't have one at the other end of the village, so we would, in that instance, have 2. Westmeath is the same way, where there's only one, but Gore Line would be another one. Beachburg has 2, but being located centrally in the middle of the township actually has 4 entrance points, so there would be 13 in all. And those match up really well to the recommendations in the Community Improvement Plan Phase 1 that talked about that we should make sure we have entrance signage for all the villages and hamlets. The second one in lighting is a specific item in here, is to replace the street lighting and the boat launch lighting in La Paz to LED. And we would do so by piggybacking on the Beachburg project. So there's approximately 23 or less items, so we've estimated the budget, but we feel that we could do the La Paz project. Another one is replacing the winter streetlight displays in Cobden. They're showing some age. They were originally paid for, Bonnie Hafferty has done an awesome job of raising money from business owners to do those investments. So we're recommending that we replace 10 of them, similar to what we've done in Beachburg. In addition, the park signs at Veteran Memorials Park, so not the digital one, but the two on either end, they're really showing their age, so we're recommending replacing that one. And Foresters Falls Park sign as well is very much faded, and I think they've had to spray paint on it, so we would replace those signs. And then new street banners for, so 50 in total, for Beachburg, Cobden, Foresters Falls, and Westmeath. So Foresters Falls would see some, and then in Beachburg, Cobden, and Westmeath, we would do some strategic ones to advertise some special events which fits with the guidelines of the program. And as I mentioned, I show the budget and financial implications. We're slightly over budget, but we would utilize the money that was set aside in the budget for gateway signs. We would utilize to pay for the entrance signs. So we budgeted $28,000 with $14,000 coming from taxation and $14,000 coming from the grant. So in this case, we would only use the $14,000 that was coming from taxation since we didn't get the grant. And then this allows us to proceed as soon as possible and do those projects right away. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Councillor McLaughlin, please.
And just, Robert, are you still looking at the maintenance on the two big signs on the highway? We spoke about there's some deterioration, and I think that needs to be done for sure before we do any other ones. So as long as the money for there is still allocated for that project, because I think it needs to be done. The rest, I'd be quite in favor.
The issue with those, the red grant we could not use, we could only use for a branding strategy, so since we didn't get that grant, so what I would do is, as I said, we have $14,000 budgeted. What we would focus on, since we got this money, is to do the villages and hamlets. And if we see some savings on the banners, for instance, like in Cobden, they already have brackets for banners, so we can save some money. So the hope is we could still do those two on the highway, but if not, just like what we planned on doing before this money was announced, every entrance to the township on county roads doesn't have any signage. So what we would do is, if we're not able to do those two gateway features this year, we would propose to do them next year with the entrance signs into the township from the county roads.
Councillor McLaughlin?
If I may, I thought you said there was money already allocated out of from the budget. Is that correct? Like, not grant money?
It was both grant money and taxation.
Yes.
So what I'm recommending, because Main Street tells us to focus on villages and hamlets, what I'm suggesting is, because of that new money, we focus on the hamlets first. And if there's extra money, we'll do those two gateways. And if we don't have enough money, we would wait and do them next year when we do the entrance ones on the county roads, which is Welcome to Whitewater Region, because we don't have them now. So it's just so that if we're going to do the signs in the villages and hamlets, we do them all at the same time, instead of not doing some and doing the two on the highway. So what I'm recommending is we do the hamlet ones, and if we have time and money, we do the two gateways, and if not, we do it next year with the entrance signs on the county roads. We have a lot of catch up to do, is I guess the bottom line, and just...
Yeah, and I quite well understand that. My biggest concern is that if we don't do some maintenance on those two signs, every year you put it off, it gets that much bigger, because the deterioration doesn't go away, it escalates. That's all. That was where my concerns and my thoughts were coming. So as long as you think we can do it next year and there's no more deterioration going to happen, I'm just looking for more or less the preventive maintenance.
Any other comments or questions? If not, we'll vote. All in favor? Carried. I think that concludes it. Councillor McLaughlin? Get out of my seat, Hal, you breaker.
And the first item is 7.6-A, Mowat Drive, Hydro Bay Road, and Hyatt Crescent Trail tender.
The Physical Services Committee recommend council of the Township of Whitewater Region award Mowat Road, Hydro Bay Road, and High Crest Trail tender 2018-06 to Greenwood Paving Pembroke Limited at a tendered price of $305.
Jackson, second by Councillor Regier. Discussion. Maybe Janet?
I'll go through this one in a little more detail. We covered a number of tenders that all closed on April 9th. They were all in the budget. First portion I put under the analysis is the tenders that were received, including HST. Whomever we have recommended, I've broken down to take the rebate off the HSTs so you have total cost, if you wish to go through those. In this case, we have the three roads were priced together. They were priced separately, the tender going out together. The total price is just over $74,000 under the budgeted amount. The funding sources are reserve funds and OSIF formula funding, as well as gas tax. So we will take the funds from that, and any remaining funds will remain in those reserves as originally, where they originally came from.
Councillor Jackson.
They're going to be doing some base work as well?
Yes, I didn't bring all of the tender work, but we do have each road within the tender. Some have culverts, some don't. Some have dig-outs in certain spots. It varies from tender to tender for all of these projects.
And then with regards to the driveways, how is that going to work?
We've put in, which we didn't have in past years, we put in a clause that they must, so we have to work within our right-of-way, and they have to go back. They can't go any farther back than obviously our right-of-way, and I think it's worded that the slope has to remain as is, or no greater than a certain steepness, obviously, and it must be returned to the existing surface. So in other words, what has occurred in the past is as we've lifted the road 6 inches and completed it with DST, we've just kind of gone into the driveways. Some of them were paved, some were interlocked. We've had to go back last year in particular and alter a couple of those. And if somebody is paid, although it is on our property, to put in an interlocked driveway, it's reasonable that we return it to that. So that was part of the walkabout. It was a compulsory one, and it was pointed out to them.
So if somebody's driveway is paved, it will be...
It would be saw cut potentially and repaved.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Second item on the list is Turcotte Road tender.
The Physical Services Committee recommend council of Township of Whitewater Region award Turcotte Road tender 2018-07 to Greenwood Paving Pembroke Limited at a tendered price of $98,988, inclusive of HST.
Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Mackay, second by Councillor Regier. Maybe Janet?
Yes, we received 3 tenders for this project as well. We are over budget on this one by just over $7,000. The amounts are coming from reserve funds. Total for all the projects were well under our budgeted amounts, so we do feel we can certainly manage the funding from reserves. We are fairly close. However, what we are going to do is go into the driveway slightly on Miller Feed and Seed. That end of it is HL4, so that's just a little more costly than the DST, and tenders come in as they come in. I think reasonably we're fairly close on it, though, so we will need approval because we are over budget.
Any questions? I just have one for Janet. Janet, you said you were going to do, is it HL4 at the entrance to Miller's? Is that...
HL4 is from the highway to past their entrance. The majority of the traffic comes in at that end. It is HL4 now, so it will be ripped up. The rest of it's already gravel, so it'll be returned to pre-last year surface where it again is asphalt from the road to Millers, DST from there to Snake River.
And that's the way it was previously. Okay, that answers my question. If there's no other questions, then I will call for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Next item on the list is C, Indian Road tender.
The Fiscal Services Committee recommend Council Township of Whitewater Region award Indian Road extending from Highway 17 northerly to civic address number 1645, tender 2018-08, to Greenwood Paving Pembroke Limited at a tendered price of $183,354.93, inclusive of HST.
Mover? Moved by Mayor Johnson, second by Councillor Jackson. Janet, maybe you can fill us in?
So this portion of the road that is getting done is from Highway 17 up over the hill in the first couple of very sharp corners. And it is a tendered project. It is HL4 surface. From that on, the in-house staff will be looking at ripping up the rest of the road, adding granular material, and then we'll be putting out another tender for DST on that. So when you go through the project, I'll take you to the second page where we're appears to be $220,000 under budget, but that is not correct because those funds, the funds for the project, include the second tender, which has not been let as of yet. So this tender is only for that first portion. Again, our staff, in-house staff, will be doing the rest of the road, preparing it, and then we will be putting out a tender for surface treatment of Powers Road, Colesmith, where their guide rails are, Indian, and I believe that's it. So again, it appears that we're well under budget, but that 220 should be for materials to complete Indian.
Councillor Jackson.
Just one question. I see where Greenwood Paving has been successful in a number of them. Is there dates that they're going to be tied to get these projects done? In the past, I don't know if it was management that had issues getting them. I think it was Greenwood that was to get them here to do the projects, or what the issue was, but there was years on end that they could never seem to be able to do projects. So I just want to, and I don't know if it was Greenwood or not, I just want, with three projects, I want to make sure that they get them done. And July would be nice for my road because I'm away. I'm just kidding.
What we have done, we do have a date. I will check that date. It isn't July, and I believe September 15th. And I believe what we also did put in, which we may or may not, it provides us with an opportunity to claw back funds if the project is not done. So I can get that to you and provide you. I don't know exactly what the wording is within the tender at this time.
So all projects to be finished by September 15th?
Yes. I will check each project
or
and
whatever,
email
yeah.
that to you, but yes.
And if my memory serves me right, I think the penalty clause, Janet, is $300 a day.
I believe it was 300. We tossed around 100 or 300, so I will check that. Now, that would be another process should we wish to go down that
Right.
line. And it also has repercussions, so
Yeah.
I caution everybody.
Yeah.
But we did put those in to try and capture that.
Yeah. I just think it's important with that type of treatment that it's done earlier rather than later because it needs to be packed and it needs the heat.
Any other discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And the next item, item D, Anderson Drive and Watchhorn Drive tender.
The Physical Services Committee recommend Council of Township of Whitewater Region award Anderson Drive and Watchhorn Drive, tender 2018-09, to Greenwood Paving Pembroke Limited at a tendered price of $255,947.26, inclusive of HST.
Mover? Moved by Mayor Johnson, second by Councillor Jackson. And Janet, I'll turn it over to you.
Again, we received 4 tenders. The price came in at $256, just under that. The approved capital expenditure was at $314,000. That, however, is debentured. It was approved as a debenture. So any savings, we will just borrow less money moving forward. I do anticipate on this job, we're really ripping up Anderson quite extensively, doing some asphalt work in front of McGregor's, and we're trying to go into the driveways a little bit there as well. The other issue is in relation to the old railway, so we will have a bit of work to do on the slopes there. This is a project that would not surprise me if we have a few little extras, nothing major, but we certainly are well within our funding to be able to do that, and that's just because we're doing a couple of grade raises that we are trying to fit in with the slopes. We did look at, we were requested to look at straightening the road out, and we just don't have the right-of-way within that area to do it. So again, some brushing and trying to keep it clear and taking out those significant sags should assist. So again, well under budget. I do anticipate there may be a couple of extras, and any savings will be seen. They're together, Watchorn. So what we're doing is on Watchorn, we're also raising that little bit of road there, putting in a new culvert, and then we'll be paving over it in its entirety over top of the DSP.
Any other, Councillor Olmsted?
Further to Councillor Jackson's remarks, and while I love the savings, Greenwood seems to be undercutting significantly a lot of the other vendors. Look at this one; they're undercutting up to 40% of some of these bids. So, will somebody be monitoring the work being done?
We will be, and they've done good work for us in the past. We certainly haven't had any issues. Obviously, they do the asphalt to make the asphalt, and from my understanding in conversations with other local firms, that there's some good prices in asphalt this year. So when you're producing it yourself, they probably, potentially could be the ones providing it to the other companies. I do know I had some calls from other asphalt companies that may be subcontractors here. So a lot of their savings would be that. We got the prices out early. A lot of them are pretty hungry, we understand. So.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify that from my experience, Greenwood Paving is pretty much the Cadillac of the paving crew in the valley. So I'm glad to hear that they did get it.
Mayor Johnson.
Yeah, just to add to what Janet said, Greenwood Paving own their own pulverizers, graders, trucks, paving machines, all of that, all in good shape, all state of the art, and they're equipped to go in and do a road from scratch. Then they also have a lot of packers, which is essential. So, and they do wonderful work actually on one of the better ones. I think they're right up there with everybody that's good at it.
Okay, I just have one question for Janet. Have we ever, and to my recollection, paved over tar and chip before?
I don't know that we have. I spoke to two contractors about it. There's mixed views. One guy said, sure, they do it all the time and it's recommended. The other guy said they don't really recommend it, but they have done it and they've had great results doing it. So we felt with the traffic, there's a lot of cut-through traffic. This is the place to try it. The DST's in reasonable shape. That would cause issues if it certainly wasn't in good shape. And so we'll try it. Like I said, both companies were comfortable doing it. So they weren't these companies. They were other contractors that I am aware of that knew personally to touch base with.
Okay, that was my biggest concern. It goes back, and I think it's about 8 years since we redid Watchorn Drive, if I'm not mistaken.
And not to speak for the manager, Mr. Chair, but my understanding is after 7 years, the DST should get another lift. So we're probably in that kind of good, and this whole debate about we're replacing roads in say Anderson's case that have passed their useful life. And then preventative maintenance, so doing the third lift on certain roads. So this one fits in that 7-year ballpark for DST.
Okay. That answers my questions. That was my biggest concern was, the paving over top of the tar and chip. That's all. But anyway,
Numerous places do it. It's
I
up
know
in the
the
air
count-
whether it's recommended.
the county quite often paves over pavement, I know that. And so there may be no difference between paving over pavement or paving over the tar and chip. So, like you say, we can try it, see what it, and hopefully we get some great success. Anyway, enough said, I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Next one on the agenda is Colesmith Road guardrails.
The Physical Services Committee recommend Council Township of Whitewater Region award Colesmith Road Guide Rails Tender 2018-10 to Boral Fence and Guide Rail Contractors Limited at a tendered price of $26,103 inclusive of HST.
Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Mackay, second by Councillor Regier. Maybe Janet, can I turn it over to you?
Yes, this is the portion of Colesmith. We had a couple of sets of guide rails that we wanted to put in last year. It was in with the tender with Cedar Haven, West Ross area. It was taken out due to costs, so we've done it as a contract just for the guide rails at this point. The funding came in just over $7,000 under, $7,600 under our approved budget price. However, within the tender, we're actually going to do some, it's really poor asphalt in that area, or DST. We're going to raise the road, and the contractor will come in after we've done the grade raise going through there with the gravel, so that our guide rails will be put in at the proper height to the raise. And then this is, we talked last year about leaving it, or when we did our road tour, leaving it on till a future date with gravel. However, we believe we're under sufficiently when we tender. We want to include this portion of Colesmith in it. So our guys in-house will add the grade to it, then the guide rails will be done, and then we'll tender it with the other roads to put the DST back on.
Discussion. I just have one question, Janet. There's no culvert changes or anything like that, so there's no reason, we're only gonna put a minimum amount, is that correct?
Yes, we're just raising it in that area, grinding up the asphalt or the DST, sorry. But we just didn't want to add 4 or 6 inches and then have them come in and put the guide rails and have to alter that later. They are at a required height.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and that, 'cause I'm an adamant, person, I like to see it settle, but if we're not digging up, we're just adding a minimum amount to it, there's no reason why not to put the, tar and chip it after we're finished as well, so. Okay, that does it, and no other discussion, I'm gonna call for a vote, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We'll go on to item F, the Cobden Wastewater Treatment Plant upgrades.
The Fiscal Services Committee recommend Council the Township of Whitewater Region accept the status report prepared by JP2G Consultants Inc. for the Cobden Wastewater Treatment Plant upgrades for April 2018.
Discussion? I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Mackay, second by Councillor Jackson. Discussion? Maybe Janet, do you have any input?
Yes, we're JP2G is doing the detailed design. We actually had a great meeting on Tuesday with staff, Aqua and JP2G. So that's moving forward. It was a very valuable meeting, having the operators there as well. This is their status report that they provide to us with each invoice. Obviously, we'll start to see those move a little bit quicker now. We were stalled with them for a short time. What I would like to note is just for council, I believe I had provided a memo, but the intent is on May 9th to advertise the project. It would close on June 7th. The consultant will have a review of those and provide a recommendation to council or to staff. A report will be brought back to June 20th, and following that, that's the night the council would award. So we're hoping that by the end of June, the project will be awarded and construction will commence. So we will continue to have meetings with the consultant and Aqua. Very valuable.
Councillor Regier.
Just how long is the procedure after it's awarded? What is the time frame, do you think, to completion?
I wasn't here when all the original work was done, so I would want to go back to confirm, but it will be at least a couple of years.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor McKay.
Yeah, when are they starting this actual project?
Well, we're hoping that it'll start as of the end of June. They'll be awarded, and they can start immediately. I will look up some of those dates and see if I did have some dates to provide you on the final. We got an extension on the grant, and I just don't want to give you the wrong year. We went to the max, and we did accept the max, so all work would have to be done by that. So I can certainly provide you with a couple of other dates outside of this. Might be beneficial.
Any other discussion? If not, I'll go. Councillor Olmsted?
Yeah, not a discussion, I just want to comment. I want to thank Janet for her professionalism and her patience going through this process the last, 6, 8, 9, 10 months, a year. And I find that I've received a lot of clarity from the information that Janet's been providing. So I want to thank you for that.
I think as well that goes all around the table. Thank you, Councillor Olmsted. So I'll call on the vote then. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. And the last and final item is the Cobden Wastewater Treatment Plant Extension Cost.
The Fiscal Services Committee recommend Council Township of Whitewater Region receive this report for information purposes as it relates to the Cobden Wastewater Treatment Plant costs, both to date and anticipated.
Janet? Need a mover? Moved by Councillor McKay, second by Councillor Olmsted. I was doing good, and then I blew the last two.
So staff were asked to bring back some estimated costs. Just for clarity, there is cost to date, so they are actual, as well as a number of anticipated costs. Until we actually get a tender, we're not going to know what our true costs. And again, I want to inform council that there is provisional costs within the tender as well. So as an example, we have quite a steep rock slope. So we will be doing some blasting. There would be provisional items for your footings, as an example, your piles and footings. So some costs do have moving targets, as is with these type of projects of this size and nature. So again, I just want everybody to be aware, when I've got to the cents here, you have to have that common sense to understand their moving targets. So in going through them, the first is the actual request for funding. We do have that value down there. As you can see, the second section in line A, second section is actually the eligible funding. So this is the actual amount we got minus the Whitewater amount. So there's different reasons that could be associated with that. I do know it's federal and provincial. Federal funds for engineering vary from their funding that they'll provide for actual construction. So there's percentage differences. As well, HST comes into play, and I'm sure they have quite a formula that they use to figure out what they're providing us. So then we have the consultant invoices cost to date, 15, 16, and 17. I also have other costs to date. These are very nominal. I think these were advertisements, and we'll continue to have those. We can request funding for those as part of the project as well. So then what I have is a total new estimated cost. So we have the actual original cost for the project. We have the lost time costs, estimated between 3 and 5% through the consultant. I've put them at the 5%. I believe at this stage, I prefer to look at the worst case scenario. We go through, we do have contingencies, we have HST, et cetera. So the new estimated project cost at this point is about $9.8 million. Then there is also cost to complete the project. So through that, and the reason that's different than the total estimated project is because we already have paid out certain funds. So we've already paid the consultant a certain amount of money, so that's not required from funds from here moving forward. So again, there's a lot of numbers here. If you have any problems and you want to read them, some assistance in where I came up with these, please get in touch with me. And the bottom part, we were asked directly with relation to the Part 2 order. Again, I have provided those costs using the 5% increase. It's a really difficult thing to get a hold of because we don't have a company tendering prior to it and the same company tendering a year later with nothing but costs for projected materials and labor. So, again, it's moving targets. Everybody has to understand where these numbers come from. That's my concern. So I think we're in gear. We're moving forward. On the bottom end, the next page, so we've got our grant funding, which you saw from above, which is the total B, not the amount that we requested. There was additional funding in there. And going through to try and calculate what our own costs are to Whitewater. So the grant funding doesn't increase. The additional costs are absorbed by Whitewater Township, and you'll see the increased cost there. So the original amount we were going to put forward was $3.1 million. We'll have to add an additional $473,000. If these numbers are all correct, knock on wood, we're getting great tender prices right now on roads, and hopefully it'll carry forward into this project.
If I can add 2 items. First, regardless of why the delay occurred, I think it's important to note that when a multi-million-dollar project is delayed by 1 year, there will be cost increases due to inflation. So I think regardless of what happened in the Part 2 order and all that stuff, a multi-million-dollar project that is delayed, there are inflationary costs as a result of that. The second piece is that this was supposed to be a design build tender, and during the delay, and why we see that we had some costs from JP2G over last year, they proceeded to move towards the detailed design. And that is to JP2G's credit to get us kind of back on track in terms of this project. So kudos to everybody involved with this project, and as Janet has said, we'll have a better idea of overall costing once the tender is done. And I don't know if Marcia has the numbers handy, but we did, I think it was over $500,000 we've already spent on this, but we have put in some claims and have received some payments, and I think it's in the $270,000. So it's $270,000 that we've received back from the province and the feds, which help because we haven't gotten a construction loan yet on this project. We will when we're closer to after the tender is issued and awarded, but it's getting that $270,000 from the grant funding is definitely helpful from a cash flow perspective.
Any other questions, concerns? If not, I will call for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And that ends the Fiscal Services Committee meeting.
And we're off. Bylaws.
Be it-
Number 8.
Be it resolved that the following bylaws be taken as read and passed. Bylaw 1804-1055 to authorize the execution of a municipal funding agreement with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario for Ontario's Main Street Revitalization Initiative. Bylaw 1804-1056 being a bylaw to establish a municipal election automatic recount policy. Bylaw 1804-1057 being a bylaw to establish a use of corporate resources for campaign purposes policy. And bylaw 1804-1058 being a bylaw to establish a municipal election sign policy.
Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Mackay. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. I didn't see anybody opposed, didn't ask. Number 9.
The Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approved the list of projects to be funded in 2018 with the Main Street Revitalization Initiative funding to be received from the Province of Ontario as outlined in the staff report.
Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Regier. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Number 9-2.
The Council of the Township of Whitewater Region award Mowat Road, Hydro Bay Road, and Highcrest Trail Tender 2018-06 to Greenwood Paving Pembroke Limited at a tendered price of $305,468.38 inclusive of HST.
Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Mackay, seconded by Councillor Regier. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. And 3.
The Council of the Township of Whitewater Region award Turcot Road Tender 2018-07 to Greenwood Paving Pembroke Limited at a tendered price of $98,988 inclusive of HST.
Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Olmsted. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried.
The Council of the Township of Whitewater Region award Indian Road extending from Highway 17 northerly to civic address number 1645, tender 2018-08 to Greenwood Paving Pembroke Limited at a tendered price of $183,354.93 inclusive of HST.
Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Regier, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried.
That Council of the Township of Whitewater Region award Anderson Drive and Watchhorn Drive, tender 2018-09 to Greenwood Paving Pembroke Limited at a tendered price of $255,947.26 inclusive of HST.
Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Mackay, seconded by Councillor Olmsted. All those in favor? Any questions? Do you have a question?
Yeah, it's paved from one end to the other, from Beachburg Road to Beachburg Road.
HL4, yeah. Okay, all those in favor? I think it's supposed to be two lifts in front of McGregor's, just in front, yeah. Okay, carried.
The Council of the Township of Whitewater Region award Colesmith Road Guide Rails, tender 2018-10 to Boral Fence and Guide Rail Contractors Limited at a tendered price of $26,103 inclusive of HST.
Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Mackay, seconded by Councillor McLaughlin. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried.
The Council of the Township of Whitewater Region accept the status report prepared by JP2G Consultants, Inc. for the Cobden Wastewater Treatment Plant upgrades for April 2018.
Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Regier, second by Councillor Mackay. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried.
The Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive this information for information purposes as it relates to the Cobden Wastewater Treatment Plant costs both to date and anticipated.
Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor McLaughlin, second by Councillor Mackay. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Notice of motion.
I just want to wish Marcia a very happy birthday today. I just wanted to get that in before we ended, so happy birthday, Marcia. Many more.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, we start with, Councillor Olmsted.
Yes, I'd like to bring forward a motion, that the offensive attire such as I have sitting beside me is not allowed in the council chambers any further. So if I could bring that forward as soon as possible, please.
I know he's not referring to me, but I would disagree with his comments with regards to Councillor McLaughlin's tie. It's very fitting, and I think everybody should wear one.
Councillor Mackay, or Councillor well, that's Montreal though. Councillor McLaughlin.
Well, it's only going to bump up if we get past this series, so just get ready.
I was thinking it took quite an effort, or finally quite an effort to make a tie come forward. Okay, Councillor.
Just be careful the next month, next meeting.
Any other notices of motion? Any other comments? All right. Number 11, minutes.
The Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approved the following minutes of April 4th, 2018, regular council meeting, closed session, understanding that they remain confidential.
Moved by Councillor McLaughlin, second by Councillor Regier. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Correspondence. Motion of support for financial resource for Assistant Management, Township of Madawaska Valley. That's probably a good one to support.
The only issue is that there have been funds available. We got a grant from to help with our asset management, so I would suggest it's just to be noted and filed.
Okay, that would, yeah, I didn't realize, I should have realized that though. New release, Algonquin Trail, County of Renfrew. Yeah, it's good to see that things are moving forward, yeah.
That was just with regard to the concerns with Head Mariah and Head Clara Mariah, and just noting that it's all bikes ahead, I guess. So just noting that issue from a county perspective has been resolved.
Okay. Number 14, confirming bylaw.
Be resolved that bylaw 1804-1059, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its regular meeting held April 18, 2018, be taken as read and passed.
Get a mover? Moved by Councillor Mackay, second by Councillor Jackson. All those in favor? Carried. Opposed, if any? Carried. Busy. All right, this meeting is adjourned. You are welcome.